There has been too much disunity at the White House. They have to get their act together. They have to do a better job. And it's really as simple as that. And the president has to get hold of this.
And that is a Republican voicing those concerns, obviously Peter King from Long Island. So what is next with the Flynn mess here? Is there a big vacuum to fill? Has the administration lost all credibility? Well, let's bring in our panel to weigh in. Jerry McKinstry is managing director of the November team. That's Republican-leaning political consulting group. Dominic Carter, of course, political journalist and author. Scott Vanderhoff, former 5-term Republican Rockland County executive and co-chairman of the Palisades Institute of Dominican College, and Andrew Whitman, who you already met, our senior political correspondent. The biggest casualty beyond, obviously, Michael Flynn himself today, Scott, is it credibility for the White House? Is it, what do you think they lost today?
Well, they lost momentum. I mean, one thing that was supposed to happen today was something about immigration. Remember, that was the plan generally. So there's no question they've lost momentum. I think they gained a little credibility for the day, which is, in this case, pretty amazing. I mean, because the guy lied, and so they've made it fairly straightforward that they're not going to accept that. This is a group, you know, who have trouble telling the truth, some of their folks, and so I think that is a positive. All the other things are negative. So my suspicion is the momentum has suddenly been stopped on some of the things that, let's say, the pro-Trump supporters were saying yes to and doing well on. But this story, as a friend of mine, Dominic Carter, said, has legs. And I think we'll have to see an awful lot more.
And I'll get into the legs of that story with Dom in a second. But Andrew, to me, you would think when there is a termination, you make it clear that there's a bright line that this person was terminated for X, and as a consequence here, this is where we stand as administration. I think they even bungled that. They made it clear to me, at least, that he was terminated because the story got out, right?
Yeah, he was fired for getting caught. I mean, first of all, there's no chance that Flynn, the incoming national security advisor, engages in the conversation that he had about sanctions with the Russian ambassador without the blessing of the President of the United States.
But even, and I happen to agree with you 100%, even without the evidence to support that, where did Trump go today? He talked about these leaks, by the way, from his own administration, but it's the fault of media, I guess, reporting the leaks. And then they went on so far as to say, what he did wasn't wrong. It's just that he lied about it to us. That's wrong too.
Well, yeah, but I mean, the one thing we know about Trump is he's not going to come clean and say we screwed this up.
But even
this is the
Spicer
problem.
today.
This is basically the problem is the media. The problem is that he lied. The problem is not the actions that we asked him to do and that he successfully went out and engaged and did. Look, I think they look like they don't know what they're doing. They look incompetent. They look like they're untrustworthy, and they have no idea what's going on foreign policy-wise. And also, I mean, Pence found out about this Thursday that he had been lied to 3 weeks ago or 2 months ago, rather, by Flynn and all this. So you also have one hand not having any idea inside the White House what the other hand is doing.
And I'll get to the communication of this a little bit. Hold on a second. I'm patting my hand if people can't see it at home. Who's the guy who's been yelling about Russia for the last more than 6 months, okay?
You.
We'll get to the Russia card later here because chickens have come home to roost. But the legs of this story. Let's talk about those two questions we talked about with the political White House reporter that every journalist and their brother are trying to figure out. Of course, who knew what and when did they know it? When did Trump know he did this? We've already gotten 3 different dates as it relates to this. When Sally Yates went up and they told White House counsel, you could be blackmailed by this. Who told who, what, and when? And do we really think, to Andrew's point, that Mr. Flynn decided all of a sudden to go rogue in a conversation with the ambassador to Russia, enough that the ambassador thought it was good enough to tell Putin, by the way, stand down, let the diplomats stay here, this will all go away in a little bit. Clearly, for a guy who talked to the president reportedly a dozen times a day, because that's the access that Flynn had, that this all of a sudden would come out of the ether and there wouldn't be another conversation. I think the one thing we've learned the last 48 hours is this stuff's getting out here. Right?
No doubt about it, Richard. It's almost like, where do we start here? One, the evidence clearly seems to be indicating, going in the direction of Flynn was delivering a message. The question is, from whom? But it had to be a serious person for Putin to take it seriously and stand down. 2, the president has already been proven that he lied. Reporters asked him about this. He said he didn't know anything about it. And now Sean Spicer comes out today and says, oh, we meant the Washington Post report. So they're literally splitting hair. Let me be clear on this, Richard. I know we're going to talk about this next segment, I believe. This could lead to the impeachment of a president. Let me be very clear about this. This story has tremendous legs, to quote somebody I know, Scott Vanderhoff.
And we're going to talk
tremendous
about
legs.
where the scope of the investigation should go. But, and Jerry, you've dealt with messaging, and you've had to deal with when there's a tough story you got to get out, there's a way to do it. This isn't breaking new ground. There's some 101 rules. Explain to me how yesterday you got Kellyanne Conway saying, he's got our full support. 100% we got his back. Spicer gives a completely 180 on it less than 2 hours later when he's doing another conversation. They can't get their timelines right. Apparently, if you believe the reporting, I use the Game of Thrones, they use that analogy between aides. One turning on the other for who's going to leak what to try and get another one pushed out. There are so many power centers and different agendas going on right now. I've never seen anything like it. Have you?
Well, no. I mean, they have a crisis of competence. And as you talk about the Game of Thrones, I mean, they talk about there's different fiefdoms going on, and there's these power struggles going on, and you know, you have your Priebus, and you have your Spicer, and you have your Conway, and you have a whole nother slew of it. To your point about communications, I mean, they seem to be on different messaging. Whenever you have a crisis, when you throw somebody overboard, you want to be clear, you want to be clean, and you want the crisis to be over. What they have done is created more questions. And I think what's going to happen, and we'll get into this later, is that there's more questions being asked, and the Congress is going to have to get involved, and there has to be transparency. This is not going to go away. As you guys alluded to, this has legs, and now I think
there's so many messengers.
So many messengers, yeah.
And clearly, when you see one person come out, I mean, look, even this weekend, Miller, right? Steve Miller. I don't know what planet that guy's from, but think about what he would say versus what a Spicer would say and a Conway. Before they even open their mouths, they have completely different approaches and seemingly even agendas and worldviews, and it comes out. It's not like somebody says, okay, and you know this, okay, guys, these are the 5 points. Who's ever doing an interview, stick to these 5 points. I don't care if they ask you about the weather, come back to the 5 points. They're freelancing, and apparently they're not being briefed before they do the Sunday shows, the afternoon debriefs, and everything else. How do you run a candy store this way? Really, though?
No, it's a good point. I mean, we talked about this last week, and it comes down to leadership. And you have to have your talking points, your agenda set, so that every time you go out there, you go out to battle, that you are setting your agenda, communicating your message. As you mentioned, they are all over the place, and I think what's going to happen is you're going to see, one member of the administration after another just get picked off, and he's going to lose.
And that's a perfect segue, Scott, to this, which is, I know they ran as an insurgency campaign, as people from the outside, and I'm not even getting into the policy, drain the swamp, and what happened. I'm just saying, I get it. But there's no experience in the White House. Nobody can turn on the lights, literally, if you believe the Times stories in there. But more than that, nobody can create a structure. Do they have to get a James Baker or a Bill Gates or somebody to get in there to say, this is what we're going to do, guys. You stop talking. You do the following. I'll do this. No one speaks until I clear the message. It sounds obvious, and there's a few party fathers that can do this job, but I don't think that there's a willingness that I've seen, at least, or an acknowledgement that the reality is this bad 3 weeks that you need it. Do you get that sense?
Oh, absolutely. And you need that person in order to bring this all together. I don't care what party you're from, you have to do it. I mean, it's so obvious in the imagery of that meeting about North Korea in a clubhouse where people are dining. What in the world were you thinking? I mean, a local mayor would not have a sensitive conversation in a restaurant. I mean, much less in international issues.
How about posing with a football with the guy with the posing with the guy with the nuclear football? And they recognize by name, and he talked about, hey, this is where the launch codes are. This is, by the way, where the trigger switch is. This.
No, all of us are going, Stop already. I mean, you know.
Koreans are saying you're giving me too much information. Hold on, you know.
But to all your points, really, you got the Priebus, you got the Bannons, you got the Millers, you got the, and these guys
Don't
are
forget
not
the Kushners
playing.
and the rest, yeah.
Kushners, who may be the only really influential.
I believe that, yeah.
He may be the only real influential person. He's the person who's helped in the Mexican relationships and what have you. So I think you're right. They may not all leave, but someone's got to take over, and it may not be Priebus.
And I think, to your point, Jerry, we have not seen the last exit forcefully or by choice. All right, coming up next, the political ramifications of the Flynn affair. Democrats may be salivating, but the question is, and my suggestion, it should be the Republicans more than anybody getting out in front of this one here. We'll explain after this.